Welcome to part 2 of the Little Cluckers and How to Raise Them video series. If you have missed our other videos, make sure you check out Raising Chickens from the Ground Up, which can help you decide what type of chickens are best for you and your circumstances, and also part 1 of this series where we'll discuss where you keep your chicks, something called a brooder, and also suitable types of bedding. Stay with me for the next few minutes and we'll continue the story about bathing chickens, heat sources, lighting, food, and water requirements. Hello, my name is Georgia. I help beginner farmers and homesteaders to build a solid foundation with livestock, naturally and intuitively from the ground up. Let's get going. When I was talking to that 80-year-old farmer friend of mine, I asked him about bathing chickens. He has always had chickens all his life, and he also shows chickens. He said that he's bathed chickens twice in his life. Once in college, where the instructors made them wash white chickens before a show, and once he tried it for showing his own birds, after some other competitors had said that it made a difference. He explained that after he tried it, it didn't make a big enough difference, so he never did it again. He did suggest that sometimes you need to check the butt of the chickens, especially when bringing in new stock or before you mix the pens together. The back end or the vent area is where you will notice if you have a pest problem like lice or mites. He also said that sometimes it helps to trim the feathers around the hind end before he puts them into the breeding pens. He says it makes a difference for fertility if it's a heavily feathered breed or if the feathers are very dirty. He cautioned that some people pull the feathers out, but if you were to get 3 or 4 feathers at a time, you might pull their skin off, which just makes for other problems. Probably stick with trimming if you find yourself in this situation with adult birds, but I digress. My point is, I guess, that if you're having some trouble with your chickens, forget the bath and get to the root of the cause. All I want to add on this is that it's possible that some genetic lines or breeds are more susceptible to problems. So if you get problem birds, be willing to let them go and not keep offspring from them. You can always try again with new stock or a different breed. As you get more experience, you'll begin to flesh out the characteristics that are important or necessary in your particular situation. This is the Rhode Island red chick, hen chick. Maintaining a proper temperature in the brooding area is extremely important. Chicks, especially meat chicks, that are exposed to too low temperatures in the brooder, even for just an hour, cannot maintain their core body temperature. Such an event can lead to increased death and a much lower than expected live weight. You can use various heat sources, like electric heat lamps, radiant tube heaters, propane brooders, or any other type of heat that works for you. Just make sure that chicks can stay at constant temperature. Ideally, they should be able to move away from the heat if they get too hot. The most common source of heat for your chicks would be the electric heat lamp with a 250-watt infrared bulb. One heat lamp is sufficient for 50 to 100 chicks. The heat lamp hung at around 18 inches above the chicks may give you a temperature around 90 or 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Although you only might need one, it's recommended to have 2. In case one fails, you still have a backup. I've always used heat lamps with much success. You do have to make sure that they are fastened securely, preferably with steel wire that cannot melt if it gets too hot. You must ensure that it has a proper cage around the bulb, as they get very hot, and if they fall down directly onto the bedding, there could be a fire, or the bulb could break and hurt your chicks. We wouldn't want that. Red lights are better than white, but the white ones can be used in a pinch. But know that a bright white light on all the time can sometimes lead the chicks to start pecking each other. The heat lamp can be raised or lowered depending on how your chicks are behaving. The lower the lamp, the hotter it will be. I prefer the lamps that have a high and low setting for more options. You can tell your chicks' comfort based on their behavior. If they are crowding together, they are cold. If they are spread out around the edges of the brooder, they are too hot. They should be milling about, eating, drinking, or sleeping. Crowding can be the opposite issue to the fried chicken problem I mentioned earlier. Chicks may crowd into a corner when they're scared or pile on top of each other to get warm. This often means that some very unlucky ones at the bottom are going to get smothered. You can lower the temperature a few degrees every week until they are comfortable without the heat, after they are fully feathered. You need to provide clean water in a proper container that the chicks cannot drown in. It's best to use the 1-gallon plastic or glass drinkers available at your local feed store, 1 per 50 chicks. Put lukewarm water in the drinkers. When the chicks arrive, as you place each chick in the pen, dip each chick's beak into the water. This gives the chick a clue as to where the water is located. Make sure the food and water is within 3 feet of the chicks, as they may not wander too far to go look for it. I put a probiotic and vitamin supplement into the water to ensure they get the nutritional boost they need after the stress of being hatched and then changing environments. Chick waterers are usually red in order to draw the chick's attention to the water. At first, the water should likely be low on the floor, but you'll discover quickly, and the shavings soon fill up the dish at the bottom. A thin square of plywood may help you to keep the shavings at bay for a little bit. This one's more pink because it's quite old and left out in the sun. So once the chicks are a few days old, they're stronger on their feet. You can raise it up like an inch on a piece of wood. I like to leave a small step around it to keep the water clean. Monitor your chicks to make sure that they're all able to figure out the new setup. As they grow, as long as they can easily reach it, the water can be raised higher as to keep it cleaner, so you can change to larger drinkers as the chicks get older. As the need arises, see, they get much bigger. Most importantly, when you put the water in the chick pen, it would behoove you to stand and watch the water to fill to its limit. Even if you think you're in a hurry, if your water is not sitting level, you must make sure the water is flowing out of the lowest side. Otherwise, the water will all drain out into your chick pen. When you come back, they could be cold and wet and maybe dead. It's recommended to start your chicks with a good quality chick starter feed with 20% protein. Most feed stores will tell you that you must give your chicks medicated feed in order for them to be healthy, and most offer you no substitutions. I personally have been working with chickens for 40 years, and I have never fed a medicated feed yet, and I have no plans to start. Consider that most feeds are also genetically modified, and that is already putting the chick at a disadvantage. As far as I'm concerned, your number one job should be to boost the natural immunity of the chick with probiotics and a healthy, natural, GMO-free feed, if organic is not affordable to you. Starting out by medicating is just setting yourself up for less healthy birds over the long haul. I, for one, do not wish to eat animals that have been medicated at any point in their life, so I don't choose to go that route. With the current batch of feed that we got, the feed company must have had some trouble with the pelleter because there are lots of big pellets when it should be a crumble. I have to stir up the feed to make sure that the smaller pieces are available to the chicks. This is the least amount of chicks we've ever had, so all our feeders are made for larger quantities. And it's harder to keep the feed fresh when the feed needs to be filled up so that the young chicks can access the feed. Ideally, all the chicks should be able to eat at once so that the smaller birds don't get pushed out at the feeder. But in all actuality, if you keep feed out for them free choice, they won't have to go as crazy at feeding time. Remove any feed that's wet or soiled with manure and throw it away. Sometimes if the food is no longer fresh or the right consistency for the chicks to eat, if you have older birds, you can let them enjoy it so it's not wasted. No birds should have to eat moldy feed though. That could be fatal. The chicks stay on starter for the first 3 to 4 weeks and then need a lower protein diet, a grower, then a finisher ration. Check with your feed provider what they suggest to, what timing, for changing the different stages of feed that you'll be using. I do start adding some grass to the brooder as the chicks get bigger, so they'll have a bit of texture in their lives. And if you're planning to have them outside, they can learn to recognize grass as a source of food. I have had them out some years. You plop them out on the grass and they just look at it because they've never seen it before. And some never learn to eat it. Chicks can remain in total light for the first 4 days. After that, you can incorporate day and nighttime for them. But make sure your heat lamps stay on if they are your only heat source. Too much light and it could depress the chick's immune system or cause them to start eating at each other. Meat birds could spend too much time eating and grow too fast for their bodies, while hen chicks might reach sexual maturity too quickly and then suffer with their poor egg production. After about 7 weeks, laying hen chicks, called pullets, will require 8 to 10 hours of constant light until they reach their proper weight and size around 19 weeks of age. Then you can gradually increase the hen's light until they reach 16 hours per day. Keeping the 16 hours of light during the seasonally dark months will help to ensure that you get eggs throughout the winter. So here we have 2 Rhode Island Red chicks. They're 3 weeks old. They look fairly similar, but one is a male and one is a female. You can tell by the size of the comb, if you have both, to compare to which one is the male and which one is the female. So this one here is the male. You can see that he's getting red under his chin and a red comb. And the female, not so much. 3 weeks old, Rhode Island Red. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Remember to press the subscribe button so you won't miss out on the final episode in this series, where I'll walk you through a couple major factors in chick rearing that are rarely discussed and often overlooked, namely your intuition and observation skills, helping you build a solid foundation towards your dream of raising some little cluckers for yourself. Now all you need to do is to decide if you're only interested or if you're actually committed to having chicks. Take the first step or take the next step to fulfilling your dream of raising healthy, happy chickens. Let me know in the comments where you're at in your chicken raising journey. Check out the link for my website in the description, where you can get more information about my coaching services, and also you can get a copy of my book through the website as well. And thank you kindly for watching. See you next time.